So hey guys, a couple years ago when I first started this channel, I made a video called Why Not to Date. And even though I was very proud of this video at the time, and even though I still kind of agree with some of the opinions in it, how do I put this? It's incredibly embarrassing. Like, this is probably in my top 5 videos I don't want anyone to see on my channel. It's that bad. My whole point of the Why Not to Date video was more so to talk about the probability of dating and how you have a very low chance of it working out well. But as the video went on, it kind of changed to don't date in general. And I do not agree with that statement. Plus, a bunch of my friends found this video recently and started commenting all these fake testimonials about how it inspired them to get out of their current relationships. At least I hope they were fake testimonials. Dating has a very important place in our society, in our culture. I don't know, but it's very important. It's time to talk about why to date. This is gonna be a very awkward video, but you know what? The last one was awkward to film. Like this one, and this one is just gonna balance out that awkwardness, hopefully, probably not. As said earlier, in the last video, I discussed why dating was not a good idea because of the probability being very, very low for that relationship working out. However, that does not mean dating isn't important. Well, there are many people nowadays who found their significant other without dating. Dating is still important for many of the rest of us. Point being, it's a lot easier to ask someone out on a date than popping the question. Although not by much, because I've heard they're both very nerve-wracking. But also, there's a way higher probability of someone going out on a date with you than actually marrying you on the spot, especially if you don't really know each other that well. Dating is a very important step to know if this or any person is truly the one for you. Now again, people can get to know other people without dating, but dating is a huge help. For one, most people like to hang out with friends of the same gender most of the times. Most friend groups are usually a bunch of guys or a bunch of girls. Now sure, both groups do intermingle a lot, and it's not that hard. Genders don't hate each other, it's not like we're in a war or anything, but if you're in a group that doesn't really mingle with the opposite gender, it'll be very hard for you to get to know someone well enough. Also, when you ask someone out, it makes them see you more in a romantic light. I know that sounds kind of awkward, but let me explain. Sometimes people won't notice you if you're not incredibly attractive or very shy, but asking someone out will get you their attention, and not just as a friend, unless they decline your invitation to date them, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it in my steps on how to dating. Before we get to the steps on how to date though, one thing you guys gotta know. There is no such thing as the perfect person. It's a sad truth we all have to come to grips with. Now I know what you're thinking. What? How dare you? My soulmate exists somewhere. And that is very true. I'm not saying that soulmates don't exist and people aren't made for each other. What I am saying is no matter how good someone is, there isn't a single person who can and will do everything you want for them. People aren't robots. They're not made to serve you. If you think you found the perfect person, you either don't know them well enough, are really lucky, or are dating a robot, which you might want to check that out. Anyways, that out of the way, time to get to my steps on how to date. It's time to get through this cringiness together. Keep in mind that I currently haven't technically dated yet, but I do have a whole ton of dating sources that I talked to before the making of this video. Whether I talked to them about dating is besides the point. And even if you don't agree with me on any of these tips I make, that's fine. This is just how I personally would like to do it. My guide to dating has 4 steps in it, and it breaks down into the acronym of WADE, or watch, ask, date, and end or engage. The E kind of is a double path. You can take either option. Starting with the W, the first step is watching. And I know this sounds incredibly stalkerish, but this step is kind of stalkerish. A lot of the things in this stage that you're going to be going through might be considered stalking, but don't take it to the extreme, okay? Don't go crazy. Basically, this watching stage is about watching the person, your target maybe, watching the person you want to date, or really anyone you want to date, and learning more about them. The goal in this stage is to take initiative into becoming friends with them. You don't have to be best friends with them, that'd be preferred, but you just want to have a good relationship on good terms. Try to start a conversation with them. Be nice to them. Not too specifically and not too creepily, and try not to be a leech and pull them from the conversation and force them to be talking to you the whole time, because if you're a leech, it's game over. Also in this learning stage, checking out their social media is important, but don't cyber stalk them, okay? Don't check their social media all the time, and especially don't like their old photos. That is very creepy. But yeah, learn to be friends with them, get to know them. That's the goal. The main reasons you want to get to know them is because 1, you don't really want to be dating someone you don't really know at all. And 2, this will help you see if there are some obvious or even hints of red flags for a possible relationship. No matter how fun or amazing they look, there are some relationships that should be avoided. If you think that you could eventually marry this person, go date him. If you don't, then don't date him, of course. That's the obvious solution. Now, I know what you're thinking. It's hard to see if someone's perfect to marry them, perfect for a relationship, but that is kind of what dating is for, after all. You don't have to make sure that they're completely perfect before you date them, because then you wouldn't really need to date them. But this is mostly to get to know them so you can carry on with these later stages and, yeah, keep track of those red flags. Basically, though, the stage is just for you to watch and learn about them. And yeah, watch and learn. On to step 2, which is ask, meaning obviously to ask them out. Now, this is one of the most nerve-wracking parts of this stage because you're confessing your feelings to someone. I'd suggest not asking anybody out until after, I don't know, 1 or 2 weeks after getting to know them. Mostly because hormones, if you're a teenager, will start messing with you, and most of the time these hormones will blind you to red flags, as mentioned earlier. However, once the week or month or whatever is up, yes, ask them out. Now, asking them out has a very hard technique to master. Now, I don't have anything incredibly fancy and like really cool and stylish, but there are very key things you need to know and very key things you need to know to avoid. 1, don't ask them out through text. Whenever you have a big question for your crush or the person you're dating, whether it be asking them out or breaking up with them or even asking them to marry you, you never want to do it through text. It kind of ruins the human... what's the word? You know how you can read other humans' emotions, but you can't really read it through text? It's not a good idea to send something that could cause heavy emotions through text. If you're that nervous about asking them out that you have to text them, you're probably too nervous to actually go out on a date with them if they say yes. So that means you're going to have to ask them out in person. And there are 2 things you kind of want to balance out when you're doing this. On the one hand, you don't want to ask them out in front of your or their friends because A, that could make you or them very embarrassed or nervous, and 2, they could feel pressured by your or their friends to make a decision that they don't want to. But on the other side of the spectrum, you don't want to corner them alone in a room and ask them to date you alone. Because, again, that's very creepy. So you kind of want to balance out being in a public place while also not making it a huge deal, whether they say yes or no. Which is difficult to say the least, but who said this would be easy? Also, be sure when you're asking them out, they know they're going out on a date. Because I've heard so many stories of where someone thinks they're asking someone out when really the person they asked out doesn't know they're on a date. And yeah, that could really cause some problems. Another thing to look out for, brace yourself if they say no to your invitation to ask them out. I know this is sad and very heartbreaking, especially since you probably put so much emotional energy into this possible relationship. But really, It's good to know that they don't want to date you. It's just something you just have to get over and move on with. But if they do say yes, then we move on to the third step, which is D, which stands for date. First thing to remember, sometimes people go on a date with you. That doesn't automatically make you boyfriend and girlfriend. There are two kinds of dating in the world. There is dating because we're in a relationship, and then there's dating to see if this could be a possible relationship. And while it could be the first one, it could just as likely be the second one. And while I don't want to put pressure on you for your first date is still incredibly important. Don't be too nervous and try to be yourself. That's the main thing. But also there are a couple other goals you want to have on your first and even future dates. One, be sure to keep in contact with them to let them know what time the date's gonna be and where you're gonna have your date, or at least where to pick them up if the date is a surprise. Or at least where you're gonna pick them up if the location and the event and the activity is a surprise. Now, I don't really have recommendations for a specific activity you could do for your first date, mostly because it depends on the person, really. Some people would really like to go to a petting zoo, while other people would love to play video games with each other more. This is why it's important to get to know them in the first stage, so you kind of know what they're into and what a fun activity for a date would be. Now, your goal for this kind of activity is to have something to do where you can also just have a conversation with them. And the point of having an activity is, if you're hanging out and you run out of stuff to talk about, you can basically just do the activity and come up with stuff to say as you go along. The main thing I do not recommend as an activity for the first date, maybe as for later dates, because this would be fun after you get to know them, would be going to the movies. You do not want to go to a movie with them. Now, this doesn't mean watch a movie with them. You can watch a movie with them, that'd be fine, but don't go to a movie theater with them, because either A, you're both gonna sit there quietly, as you should in a movie theater, and not talk to each other, get to know each other at all, or B, they might think that you going to a movie theater with them has more serious implications. I don't know how to say this, but if you know what I mean, you know what I mean. So yeah, avoid movie theaters for first dates and possibly even later dates. But you'll just have to see based on the relationship. Basically, your goal is to hang out, talk, and have fun. And at the end, ask them if they'd like to have another date sometime. And hopefully they'll be honest and say if they do or don't. And if they do keep having more dates with you, and don't date anybody else, then yes, you can officially change your Facebook status. And finally, it's gonna be the last step, which is end or engage. Now, this last step has two choices, two paths to go. You can either end the relationship if you see some obvious red flags, like if they're a really toxic and mean, controlling person, or you could just break it off because you two realize you guys don't really fit well together, or maybe it's just because you two are just going into two completely different areas, going two completely separate ways. But if you are perfect together, then it's probably the right idea to ask them to marry you in an engagement. This would be a whole other topic for a video that I am out of my league for, so I'm not gonna go too deep into this. But I would recommend waiting at least a month, maybe 2 months, maybe 3 months, maybe a year before you ask them to marry you. And if you're dating young or in college when you're dating this person, it might not be the best idea to marry them while you're still in school. But anyways, those are my tips on how to date, and really why you should date in general. Hopefully, this wasn't too cringy and too awkward. Hopefully we both got through it together. At least I got through it. I'm feeling a lot less cringy now. Thanks for asking. And hopefully this video helped you out with your dating life. Now, I didn't put a lot of specific information into it, but I did outline some of the main key things you want to know, and hopefully that will help you out in the future. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you have a great Valentine's Day, whether you're single or in a relationship. I'm probably gonna be single at Valentine's Day. If I'm not, I'm gonna be very surprised. I'm weirding myself out. Anyways, thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next video.